Most Harvard applicants get rejected because they just don't know how to write fantastic Harvard essays. A really frequent mistake we've seen with students is that they assume that school-specific essays are less important or are not important at all because, they're usually a part of the secondary application. Another reason why students make this mistake is because school-specific essays tend to have a shorter word count, and students think they can write these essays, in a day or two, and this is a huge mistake. This is simply not true. In some ways, your Harvard essays will be more important than the primary essays that you submit through Common App or other application systems like Coalition App, because Harvard essays will actually allow you to specify why you are the perfect Harvard student, what makes you a perfect candidate for Harvard, rather than just a general essay as to why you want to be a college student and why you want to get college education. When you're preparing your primary applications, most likely you're just kind of giving an impression of how great you are, right? So you include your best achievements in your essays or your best extracurriculars. You may even point out your excellent grades and so on. And that's great, but this is all very general. You don't do a school-specific essay in your primary application. So your Harvard essays are actually a great chance to make sure that Harvard knows why you're a Harvard material and why they should accept you, and we'll show you just how to do that. And before we get into more detail, my name is Zhenya. Here at BMO, we have helped over 60,000 students get accepted to top-tier programs all over the world. And I'm going to share with you what we've learned that works and what doesn't. And I'll share with you tips on how to make your application to Harvard stand out and what you should avoid at all costs. So let's jump into reviewing two Harvard essays, one that got accepted and one that got rejected. And here's the prompt for the first essay that got accepted. Harvard has long recognized the importance of student body diversity of all kinds. We welcome you to write about distinctive aspects of your background, personal development, or the intellectual interests you might bring to your Harvard classmates. And before we jump into the actual essay, I wanted to pause and discuss a common error that students make regarding diversity prompts. Often students associate diversity essays, diversity prompts with traditional categories of diversity. So for example, in my case, if I were to write a Harvard essay on diversity, I could discuss my immigration and my transition into North American culture, amusing anecdotes about my transition, moments of kind of lost in translations, and I could discuss the language barrier, right? I have a lot of stories like this, and this would be a traditional interpretation of the diversity essay, and there would not be anything wrong with this. But I could also discuss my love of punk rock, and that I grew up listening to this music and my, history of playing in punk bands. But this can also be considered diversity. In fact, in some ways, this can be even more exciting for a Harvard admissions officer, and to understand me, how I grew up, what shaped me, how I became the person that I am today, and how this can be applied at Harvard. For example, open-mindedness, or freedom of thought, those aspects of my personality and my view of the world that would benefit my classmates. And, this kind of could be more memorable than my immigration story. Again, there's nothing wrong with the immigration story, and it would be a funny essay as well. And probably I could come up with some stories that would really engage the reader. But what I'm trying to show you is that you don't need to think of diversity in a very traditional sense. You can come up with a variety of topics that can be relevant to this diversity prompt. And the key here is to think of experiences, in your life that really shaped you and that expanded your horizons, and therefore can, expand the horizons of your classmates at Harvard. So with that said, let's review the first Harvard essay that actually got accepted. My love of chess taught me how to speak Korean. Near the apartment building where my family lives, there's a park. And it's the kind of park that has tables with chessboards built right into them so people can play. Only hardly anybody ever does these days. Nobody did, in fact, except for Mr. Park, who used to sit at one of those tables with his chess set waiting for people to play with him. Most days I'd just say hi as I went by, and Mr. Park would nod at me. One day I was ambling back from school on a Friday and decided to sit down with him. Mr. Park nodded as though I wasn't staying. It was in that moment that I realized we didn't speak the same language. But I guess he knew or hoped that I would want to play because he picked up a black pawn in his right hand and a white pawn in his left hand and offered them to me. I picked black and we played. By played, I mean that I fought the fight of my life and Mr. Park drew me along until he got bored and wiped me out. After 2 or 3 games, he started trying to tell me how to play better, but I couldn't understand him. After 4 games, we parted. That probably would have been it. I wasn't planning to make a hobby out of it, but when I passed Mr. Park at the chess table next time, he made a small nod and invited me to play again. Since then, I played chess with Mr. Park every day after school. After a time, the language barrier was frustrating, so I picked up a Korean phrase book and started trying to communicate with him. The first time I knew what he was saying, which was a tip about when to castle and when not to castle, the guy got so excited that he started talking almost nonstop. The language barrier began to crumble. A year went by and my Korean was improving as fast as my chess playing, although Mr. Park was still much better than I was at both. Now we could talk together. I never figured I'd have an elderly Korean man for a good friend, but here's life with a curveball. During our visits, Mr. Park asked me about schoolwork. I was flunking chemistry at the time. I mentioned it to him and he got really excited. Mr. Park used to be a chemistry teacher before moving to the US. I got my own private tutor that day and wound up with an A in chemistry at the end of my senior year. Not only did playing chess teach me Korean, but it taught me about chemistry and friendship. Those are lessons I will bring to Harvard: how to reach out to people who are very different, how to bridge gaps no matter the obstacle, and how to help one another grow as people. And just a note for this prompt, even though Harvard does not indicate a word limit, try to keep it short and sweet. This essay that I just read, it was only 504 words, so keep it under 600 for essays that do not indicate a word limit. So why did this Harvard essay get accepted? Well, it's a great example of how a diversity experience changes you. It literally expanded the horizons and knowledge of the student who wrote this essay. It's really interesting that the source of the diversity is not the writer themselves, right? They engage with someone from a different culture and therefore change their perspectives or expand their knowledge. So we can really see how a diversity experience opens up a different world, right? And this is a really great example of narrative. It is a story, and Harvard essays should be stories. You should be telling a story rather than, listing off how an experience changed. This happened, this happened, this happened. No, this narrative was very well, well crafted into, a moving story about a friendship and about expanding your horizons and your knowledge. So this is a great example of a diversity essay. And now let's see the second essay and the second prompt. This essay, unfortunately, did not get accepted, but we'll see why this happened and why there were shortcomings and how you can avoid them. So this is the prompt for the second Harvard essay. Your intellectual life may extend beyond the academic requirements of your particular school. Please use the space below to list additional intellectual activities that you have not mentioned or detailed elsewhere in your application. These could include, but are not limited to, supervised or self-directed projects, not done at school, training experiences, online courses not run by your school, or summer academic or research programs not described elsewhere. So the essay has 150-word limit, and this is the essay. My nose was in my book, and Joe asked what I was reading. With some sheepishness, but a little pride, I showed him the Green Knight in Middle English that we were reading in our medieval literature class. I didn't know you spoke that, my friend said. I don't, I replied, but I'm figuring it out. Language is my passion. I took courses in French and German, and I'm currently enrolled in our school's first Latin course. I love learning new languages and look forward to expanding my knowledge of French and German at Harvard. Learning a new language is like opening a door to another universe, somewhere you did not have access to before. Not only does it take patience and dedication, but it also requires curiosity and open-mindedness to other worldviews and cultures. Culture and communication are inextricably linked, and I want to dive in and explore both at Harvard. So now, after you hear the essay, I want to draw your attention to Harvard's mission, their values. A part of Harvard's mission statement is Harvard's mission is to advance new ideas and promote enduring knowledge. Okay, so this is key. You know, Harvard is one of the most venerated academic institutions in the world. It is an academic institution first and foremost. So in addition to your great GPA, the courses that you took in school, they want to know how you pursue knowledge outside of the classroom setting, right? So formal knowledge or educational settings. And this essay does show that the student pursues academic interests, but note that all of the interests are actually in school. The student discusses classes that they took to sort of promote their knowledge of the English language or other languages. And this essay certainly does portray the student as very knowledgeable in their pursuit of the languages. But note that all of the learning is taking place in school. This is a major mistake. The student does not address the prompt correctly. It's really important for Harvard to see that you are pursuing your interests, your academic interests outside of school as well. It does not have to be languages, just like in this essay example, but it does have to show that you strive for excellence outside of school as well. Sort of that you're autonomous in your pursuit of knowledge, that you're intrinsically motivated to pursue your interests outside of being forced to do that by a teacher or, you know, the school curriculum. And the essay does touch upon many of the qualities that are attractive for Harvard, like curiosity, for example. That's a huge aspect of academia. But the student doesn't actually take upon himself to go out and learn the languages outside of the classroom. We're actually not even sure what level of knowledge they have of French or German or Latin as they list them, but we don't really know their proficiency level. We don't really know, whether they pursue these exercises outside of school. For example, that'd be great if they added something like, yes, I take these courses in school, but I also, go to French club or something, like, at school where we practice our skills, our language skills, or, I go to old folks' homes and speak to French-speaking elderly people to practice my language skills and visit them, bring them some joy and interaction. So the essay is very limited by the fact that all of this is happening in a school setting. So it's a major error to not address what the prompt is asking you to address. So the student either ignored the prompt and what it's asking him to do, or they simply didn't have anything to reveal, even though that's probably not true, but they made a mistake by not actually addressing the prompt and revealing what they do outside of school to learn the languages, to practice language. I'm sure they have those exercises, I'm sure they have those activities somewhere else, but they simply did not address that in the prompt, and that's a huge, huge, huge mistake. And I also want to point out that this essay is actually longer than the word limit. So that's a major no-no for any college application essays. You cannot go over the word limit. You can write shorter essays. If you can deliver your message, if you can deliver a great college essay in under the word limit that's indicated, great for you. Actually, we encourage you to do that because less is always more. Quality always trumps quantity. But if you go over the word limit indicated by the school, it's a major red flag and your essay most likely gets tossed almost immediately. So even though this essay is quite nice, it showcases this person's real dedication to the language arts and pursuing the knowledge of languages other than their native language. The fact that the essay did not address the prompt and the fact that the essay was longer than the word count are huge mistakes that you just cannot allow yourself to make. You will get rejected if you make these two mistakes. Well, here we are. We went over 2 Harvard essays, one that worked and got accepted, and one that unfortunately didn't work because of 2 major errors that the student made. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and share with a friend, maybe who's applying to Harvard, so they do not repeat these mistakes. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.